What's going on, everybody? I am Hoops and Hip Hop, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. Today's episode is episode 18, which is crazy. We're almost to 20 episodes, and today we're actually going to be following up what we talked about in last week's episode. I know, continuity, who would have thought? And we're going to talk about the anime because something pretty big happened after the end of last week's episode, so basically during the weekend. Concerning the anime, you've probably heard about it because it's been all the rage, and so we're going to be having an anime-themed episode. I do have to be honest, I don't really follow the anime too hard these days. I obviously follow what's going on with it, but I don't really watch it on an episode-to-episode basis or anything like that. Just because I'm not the biggest fan in general of the Pokemon anime and the way it's very much geared more towards kids than the games are, so it's less enjoyable as an adult. I feel like there's not as much focus on a story. It's kind of like an episodic type of anime where it's basically like something happens every day or every episode, and every episode has its own story as opposed to being a continuing story kind of thing. It's kind of not as heavily, it's not as much of a narrative basically. So I really haven't followed it very closely in a while, but I still obviously as a Pokemon fan enjoy it. I want to know what's going on in the anime. So when I found out that for the first time in over 20 years, Ash finally won an official Pokemon League because he won the Alola League, and this just barely happened in the Japanese airing of the latest Pokemon episode. Hasn't quite hit all the dubbed countries yet, so we don't have it in English yet, but it's official. He did win an official Pokemon League championship for the first time ever in over 20 years. And the response that was felt from the public and basically from the community and from the world, frankly, was about as crazy as you would expect. Not only were the Pokemon community just absolutely freaking out, but it was literally trending globally because you had ESPN posting about it. You had CNN posting about it. You had, this was not just limited to the Pokemon fandom. This became a mainstream thing, even if it was just for that day that the episode broke, and it was pretty crazy to see. It was awesome to see how, even though the anime is kind of especially in this season with the different art style they took and things like that, it's amazing to see how much Pokemon is still on the minds of the public as a whole, even though you can't really quite call Pokemon I don't know, it's not necessarily it's kind of like mainstream and kind of secular at the same time, in that you don't it's not always like it was in 2016, for instance, when Pokemon Go brought Pokemania back and everyone's talking about Pokemon, and it's as mainstream to talk about as what you had for lunch today, that type of thing. But it's still cool to see how much the people who aren't fans of Pokemon who aren't part of the community, it's cool to see how often those types of people still think about Pokemon when this type of stuff comes up. So just for that alone, I think it makes this whole moment very, very special. And that's not even just considering how special the moment is in and of itself, that Ash finally won. Our boy that we've been waiting to win forever finally won. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this in general, because the anime isn't something I really cover on my own channel. And that's because, like I said, I don't follow it super close enough to cover it in dedicated YouTube videos where I go in depth and stuff like that, but it's perfect for a podcast type discussion. And also the distributors of the anime in Japan, what are they called? ShowPro, that's their name. They are extremely, extremely strict and not in the 21st century when it comes to using their footage, and they're not really up to date with the laws of fair use. And so they tend to claim and copyright strike tons of videos that have anime footage. So I just don't like to touch it, so I don't really get the chance to talk about it that much. So I'm actually going to look forward to having this episode and talking about it with you. So with that being said, now that I've got all my general thoughts about Ash winning out of the way, we come into today's main topic for the episode of the day, and that's going to be what's next for Ash Ketchum. Now that he's done what he's been trying to do for 22 years, where do we go from here? Well, the first thing that a lot of people are worried about and have been talking about is Ash going to leave the anime? And that's actually a legitimate question because, as I said, this is the thing that he's been striving towards this whole time, and now he's completed it and he's had his moment in the sun, so it kind of seems like this would be a good chance to kind of have him fade into the sunset, so to speak, and bring on a new protagonist with this new series that's going to be announced a little over a week from now that also seems to be kind of like a reboot to the anime because it's being described as a whole new series. They're literally just calling it Pocket Monsters. I believe it's called Pokemon in like English, for instance, but it's not like Pokemon Sun and Moon, or it's not going to be Pokemon Sword and Shield. It's literally just going to be Pokemon. So and it also features all of the regions instead of just Galar as well. So it's definitely going to be different. Definitely sounds like they're revamping it. And so if we're coming off of the heels of Ash winning and they're revamping the anime and we're about to get an announcement of a new series, those kind of things kind of line up well for Ash not returning. And I can't remember the exact source, but I do remember hearing an interview with one of the anime's writers years ago, and it was on this very question of why Ash never won, or why he was never allowed to win a league. And essentially the answer that person gave was, well, Ash's goal is to be a Pokemon master. And so if he wins the league, then he's a Pokemon master basically, and he doesn't really have a reason to go on anymore. And so I even remember, I should say, him saying something to the effect of, if his story, like if he ever wins a league, then his story will be completed or something like that. And so that came to my mind personally as yet another reason of why, like, the cards could be aligning, the stars could be aligning, and and Ash could maybe be out of the anime. This could be his final moment. And this kind of all comes about in terms of conversation because a lot of people have also been kind of calling for Ash to be replaced because of the fact that he always loses. And so it's really, really ironic that everyone is just so behind him all of a sudden and loving him and talking about how much they love Ash and everything like that now that he's finally won. It's a bit, I don't know, like, as beautiful as it is to see everyone just loving Ash and getting behind him and coming together to just revel in the joy that is him winning for the first time finally, it is kind of a little bit annoying to see, like, I don't know, everyone talking universally, like, without any criticism whatsoever about why they like Ash, when you dang well know that he's been getting criticized for years and years now. So kind of makes you think that not everyone is you got some fake Pokemon fans up in here that are kind of being a little flip-floppy and riding the bandwagon. But that aside, that all kind of points as that those are all reasons as to why people are genuinely kind of concerned, worried, or just believing that he could be replaced when this new series comes about. We don't have any inkling about what this new series is going to be, so we don't know anything about it. We can't say for sure whether or not Ash is going to be a part of it or whether he's going to be cut from the anime. We don't even know how the Alola League or the Alola arc is going to end, because even though Ash has won, there are still some things, I believe, that have to be wrapped up. They're still kind of tying up loose ends, that sort of thing. So the whole series of the Alola arc is not done quite yet, and so we don't really know how that's going to end. And obviously, the way that the Alola arc ends is going to ultimately tell us whether or not Ash is going to come back. Because if he doesn't come back, they're going to have some sort of big send-off for him, or there's going to be some crazy thing that happens, like his mom is going to move to Alola and say, hey, Ash, I bought us a house here. We can stay here forever. And he's going to be like, yeah, I just won here. I'm going to defend my title and stay here in Alola forever. And he could just stay there. And that could be the way they do it. But it's definitely going to be addressed one way or another in the Alola arc. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But as far as like advocating for him not going anywhere and just continuing on to Galar and doing or having some type of new role in this new series, personally, there's the fact, I mean, I'll get into the general kind of like main reasons, and then I'll talk about a personal note that I have as to why I would say that Ash is not going to leave the anime, at least entirely. The first reason is because he's just so iconic. Like, as I was saying earlier, his victory not only was a joyous occasion for the Pokemon community, it made global headlines. CNN was talking about it. The cable news network, or whatever the heck their letters stand for, the people who always talk about freaking political mumbo jumbo and are talking about presidents and all that type of stuff from the real world, actual real headlines, that CNN, they reported on it. And when you get something like that happening, you know you've got a special character. You not only know you have a special series, but that really tells you how much people care about Ash. And it really would... I just don't think it would be a good move to take away someone that is that beloved in terms of just like being there. It would be really, really weird. I know people have been wanting a new protagonist and wanting something fresh and new, but I think this reaction just proved once and for all that he really can't be taken out of the anime in like an official capacity. Like, I think they could do some different things with him. I think if they wanted to bring in a new protagonist, they wouldn't have to have him be the main character. They could have both and essentially have Ash be like a support character that makes cameo appearances every few episodes. They could do like a future thing. So this new series takes place 10 years in the future and Ash is an adult, or maybe even 20 years in the future, and he kind of just appears as an older guy that mentors the new player character, or not the player character, but the protagonist. They could do different things like that to where he's in the show, but he's not the guy that you follow around all the time. So there's that reason. I just think he's simply like too beloved and too iconic to really remove. And the other factor that goes along with that is the fact that he pairs up with Pikachu so perfectly. For as much as Pikachu is an icon in and of itself and is literally the mascot of the franchise, Ash is a huge, huge part of that. You don't really think about Pikachu for too long without thinking about Ash. And obviously he is only in the TV show. He's not in the games or anything like that. But regardless, if you think about Pikachu, you won't think about Pikachu for too long without having Ash come to your mind. So he is almost synonymous. He is almost as synonymous with the Pokemon franchise as Pikachu is itself, and he definitely is as synonymous when it comes to the TV show. And you know they're not going to remove Pikachu out of the TV show because once again, he is the mascot. We see it in the games where Pikachu he's a headliner, even in Sword and Shield. I mean, obviously, when it comes to the actual game itself, the game is going to be full of new things and new Pokemon, and it's not like Pikachu's going to be plastered all over it, but when it comes to the actual branding and marketing of the game, Pikachu is in almost all the trailers. You see him kind of poking around and having fun just amongst all the other new characters, and that's because it's all about branding and marketing, and he's going to do the same thing for the anime too, so he's going to be there in the anime, and if he's there in the anime, Ash has got to be there along with him. The only other person you could put there to be with Pikachu is Red, who is iconic. I will give it that, but I don't know. Ash is like the TV show is definitely Ash's territory when it comes to that argument. So not only is he beloved, but he's extremely iconic. And then thirdly, the thing that kind of, especially here in America or in the English version, like in English speaking countries, I guess, that watch the English version of the anime, a lot of people forget that Ash is actually directly based on Satoshi Tajiri, the creator of Pokemon itself. He in Japanese, his name is literally Satoshi. Like, literally just straight up. Like, this is the anime Pokemon world version of the creator of Pokemon, Satoshi Tajiri. And when you've got a character like that that's based on the creator of the series itself, it just would seem kind of almost sacrilegious in a way to take that person out of the anime and remove them from the story altogether. Like, I know he's been around for a long, long time, and I know that in some ways it does make sense to have a fresh new face in there, but I just cannot fathom how you could take a character out of the show that is based on the creator of the franchise itself. And for that reason, probably above all other reasons, I think that's what would save him, at least in my opinion. Because, yeah, he might be iconic. Yeah, he might be super popular and beloved. But you could argue, yeah, you need some change. All good things must come to an end. Blah, 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 blah. But like I said, it's pretty sacrilege if you take the creator out of the very show that is based on the series he created. That just doesn't seem right. So I think for a combination of all those reasons, Ash will be there. But then it comes down to, like, what role is he going to have? With this new series that we're getting, like I said, it's going to take place in all 8 regions of the Pokemon world, not just Galar. I would assume Galar might be favorited or might be shown a little bit of bias just because we're going to be in the Sword and Shield generation by the time it premieres, so it's probably going to be kind of like the hub region for the show that gets the most screen time. But it's hard to say how it's going to operate because it's not like the good old days where we only had 2 regions, Kanto and Johto, and they were connected to each other by land, and so it was kind of like going from state to state or maybe even city to city. It was really easy to travel between 2 regions. Now we have 8 regions, so we got a lot more ground to cover, and we've gone global with the regions that we have because we're no longer restricted to Japanese-based regions like we were up through Generation 4. We now have a region based on New York City in North America. We've got a region based on France in Europe, and then we've also got a region based on the UK as well. So the Pokemon world is now very much a global world, and so it's really hard to know how you can tell a cohesive story of any kind featuring all of those different places that are all over the world. It's going to be very interesting to see. I have suggested something like a Pokemon, like in last week's episode, I suggested something like a Pokemon Generations style of thing where there could be a cohesive story that drives the narrative forward and kind of unifies all of the regions and gives all of the regions a reason for being there, but there might not be one set protagonist. There might be different protagonists that are in the different regions that deal with this narrative in their own region, and we just get to see kind of whatever's happening in the world that's causing the plot to move forward. We get to see kind of how it is affecting the different regions, and we get to see kind of different protagonists in each region and how they are dealing with it. That's kind of one very vague way I could see it working. But how Ash fits into that, it's really, really hard to say. I really think it would be cool. Like, this isn't necessarily my choice of what I would like to see in terms of Ash's role in the anime, but I think it would be really, really cool if the anime took place like 20 years in the future, after the end of the Alola League, Ash was 30 years old, he had a kid, and maybe not, I don't think, maybe not so much like go the super cliche way of having his kid be the protagonist, a la Naruto and Boruto, but I think it would be cool if he was like an older character and was like a mentor figure to the next protagonist. I think that would be awesome, because then that would be the perfect way that would really be the perfect way to kind of have his character slowly, kind of gradually just bow out to the next generation, because you just had him do something that Pokemon fans have been waiting years and years for, and that's win an official championship. Now, if there was one other thing that fans have been waiting for out of the anime and out of Ash Ketchum, what would that be? That would be for him to age. So if coming off of the Alola League championship, we actually got to see him age and kind of pass the torch on to the next generation, that would honestly be the perfect way to finish his story and like cement him forever as a legend of the Pokemon world, as a legend of TV in general, as a legend of media in general. Like it would be so poetic, it would be so beautiful. It would probably bring a tear to my eye, because as much as you don't want to take the creator out of his creation, as I was saying earlier, there comes a point where you got to kind of hand it off to the next generation. As somber and as kind of sad as it is to think about, eventually all of the developers that created Pokemon and like made it what it is today, Satoshi Tajiri, Junichi Masuda, Ken Sugimori, all of these guys are eventually going to get older, and they're going to have to retire, because they're not going to be able to make Pokemon games the way they used to, essentially. And they're going to have to pass on what they know and their knowledge and how to make a good Pokemon game. They're going to have to pass that on to the next generation. And there's going to be a point where the Pokemon franchise is in the hands of the next generation that were handed the responsibility of taking it into the future. And it's at that point, it's no longer in the hands of those who created it. And I believe because Satoshi Tajiri, or because Ash Ketchum was based on Satoshi Tajiri, that would be a very, very beautiful way of dealing with Ash's character, because while he is very, very hard to just outright cut from the anime because of his iconicness, because of who he's based on, because of his popularity, there comes a time when all good things must come to an end. As ironic as it says, as I was kind of mocking that earlier, there does come a time where things kind of have to change. The torch has to be passed on, and that's just kind of how it works. So I think personally, if I had to pick, it's really hard to say what my prediction is, because I really don't know what's going to happen. It's really hard to say. But if I had to pick and say, if there was one way I could have this series go, that if I were to choose the way that this new series was going to turn out, I would say that I would want it to be in the Pokemon Generation style, so a little bit darker, a little bit more mature, yet still family friendly. Use that kind of storytelling for an overall narrative that connects all of the different regions together, and then have it take place 20, 30 years in the future after the end of the Alola League, and have Ash be an older guy who maybe has a kid of some kind, possibly, and basically just cameos as a mentor character every so often and gives advice to the main player characters and kind of just serves as a guide, like a force of guidance, like a true mentor. Kind of like how Aang was in The Legend of Korra. If you've ever seen The Legend of Korra, which is the follow-up series to The Last Airbender, Aang is an older guy in that show, and he's dead by the time that show is taking place, but he appears every so often making cameo appearances as an older guy. And it's just, that was a great way to kind of tell Aang's story and wrap it up and have his presence be in the show while him not being the main character. And I think that would be a great way to do it with Ash, to where he can still be a part of the anime, he can still be a part of this next generation, but we're at the same time, we're kind of gradually just easing into passing this stuff on to the next generation. That way, Ash's story can get the closure it deserves. It can be done in the way that a character like Ash deserves it to be. It doesn't just have to be taken away immediately and all of a sudden, like, our time with Ash is over. I think doing it in this way, where it's gradual, it's slow, it's nice and easy, we still get some moments with him. We get to see him grow up and live his life and kind of be the adult that we all kind of imagined he never would become. I think that would be the best way to handle all of this. I think that would be the best way to handle it, because we definitely are we're in a phase in Pokemon's history where things are changing for the franchise. We're moving on to the home console. We're moving on to a home console, I should say, for the first time ever. We're approaching nearly 1,000 Pokemon. As I said, Ash just won an Alola League championship. And as scary as it is to say, and as much as I hate it, we're all getting a little bit older. And yeah, I think right now we're kind of at a turning point where evolution is going to be happening. Things are going to be turning over a new leaf, so to speak. And if I were in charge of the anime, this is probably how I would do it. I'd have an adult Ash be a mentor in the show, make cameo appearances, and while I would make his time in the show continue to last as long as I could, I would have him slowly but surely just pass that torch on to the next protagonist and have him kind of just slowly ride off into the sunset, and have this kind of be his retirement tour, so to speak, where he doesn't have to worry about winning any more leagues, doesn't have to worry about beating the evil team. He can just be there, and he can be there for us to appreciate and love, and that's how I would do it. But with all of that being said, that concludes another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast that got kind of emotional, if I do say so myself. I was getting a little bit emotional talking about that there. But if you guys enjoyed, be sure to like or love or whatever it is you do on the platform you're listening on. If you're on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment. Be sure to check us out on Twitter. As always, reach out to us either on the UCast Studios Twitter or my personal Twitter, Hoops and Hip Hop. You can also check me out, Hoops and Hip Hop, on my social media channels. Obviously, YouTube for more Pokemon content if you're interested. We've also got Twitter, as I just said. We've also got Instagram and Facebook. Definitely reach out. Let me know your thoughts and opinions about all of this. I would really love to hear from you guys. And with all that being said, obviously we'll be back next Friday. We'll see what's going on as far as the anime goes. Next Friday is going to be an interesting episode because we won't quite have the announcement yet for the new series, but it'll be on the following Sunday. So we'll definitely probably incorporate something there right before it gets announced. We'll see if we get any more Sword and Shield information, but nevertheless, it's going to be a great episode regardless. So with all that being said, thank you once again so much for watching, and until the next one, as always, I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.